So much for being here. My name is Pastor Nathan. You can call me Pastor Nathan, whatever is meaningful to you. I'm just thankful you would share your time with us in worship today. With us today, you see new people. You see new people all the time. We have some students, actually international students from International Student Ministry, who have been doing an intensive learning about the Bible, actually in the last week. So they're joining us in worship. You're going to see them back in the corner over here. Actually, one thing I want to say, there's a gentleman named Jerry Kahn. He actually calls this his church home. He watches all the way back from home over in, remind me, Kent? Taiwan, and he sees all of you and actually counts you as his church. He has a church in Taiwan as well, but we are thankful that they could be with us today as well. If you don't have to open up the Bible again, really, if you don't need to, but I need to point attention to this first verse, and we're going to recap where we've been in the Gospel of John. And so this verse, John chapter 21, verse 1. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. The last couple of weeks, we've been looking at the appearances of Jesus post-resurrection. You remember that he first appeared to Mary Magdalene. She didn't notice him at first, but then she said his name, or her name, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's Jesus. I remember him." The disciples were afraid. They were in a locked room, and somehow Jesus appeared through a locked door. We don't know how he got in the room. He shows up, and the disciples are like, "Yep, that's the Lord. That's our guy. We remember him." There was one who doubted. He said, "Unless I can actually touch the wounds, unless I can put my hand in Jesus' side, I won't believe." And do you know what Jesus did? He showed up and said, "Thomas, touch my side. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." Well, now, there's kind of this false ending in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John says, all of it was written so that you believe in this Jesus Christ, and yet there's more. Jesus reveals himself to the disciples to teach us something about who he is. And today, what Jesus teaches us is that he has been faithful and always will be faithful to us now. He has been faithful and always will be faithful to us. Our church, Reliant Church, we are not trying to hide it, but we call ourselves Lutheran. It's based off of a man who at the time of the Reformation spoke out against the Catholic Church. He didn't want to start his own church. Don't worry, he wasn't trying to meddle in that way. He was trying to actually help the church to rediscover the gospel. This guy, Martin Luther, would probably be embarrassed that there's people who call themselves Lutheran who gather and worship together. It's not what he wanted. But we do it because Luther had a very specific way, a clear vision of who Jesus was and who Jesus is. But this man, Martin Luther, was kind of a boisterous man. He had a brash personality, and that's really how he's remembered. But there is a recording, a collection of letters that this pastor wrote in the 16th century. And in these letters that kind of take a back seat to all of his reckless and brash personality is a man who has a deep heart that people would know Jesus Christ. And so in this heart, what he does, he writes letters, and and they're recorded and saved to all kinds of different situations, to women who have experienced miscarriage, to people who have experienced death, and he even writes a letter to people who are anxious. He writes a letter to someone who is anxious. And we don't have to deny modern medicine. We don't have to deny a lot of what we know about what anxiety might mean now. But he describes anxiety as facing the unknown, facing uncertainty, to face the unknown, to face a situation that you don't know how it's going to work out. And you know that in anxiety, there's moments that we can kind of look back and laugh at, and then also moments of anxiety that are debilitating and scary. You think of the anxiety of, I'm going to ask a girl to go out on a date with me. I just don't know what she's going to say, right? Real anxiety. but also maybe like a 5 on the scale of 1 to 10, right? Because on the scale of 10, when it comes to being kind of operating in the unknown, is my job feels unstable. I don't know how I'm going to provide for my family. Actually, what's going to happen is that if I can't provide for my family, then I can't pay bills, and really there's this anxiety of facing the unknown. So, when you face the unknown, what do you do? My guess is you lean on something familiar. Does everyone in this room have a comfort movie? Like that movie that you watch over and over, like Miss Congeniality or some kind of thing? Yeah, right? Like when life gets hard and you face the unknown, you lean on something you do know. For me, I lean on the gold standard of television. That is NBC's Thursday night lineup in 2007. That is like Parks and Rec, The Office, right? We'll never hit a bigger moment in TV than that. But you lean on something familiar, be it a TV show, a movie, or food. Because what you do when you face the unknown is you need to lean on something familiar, something that you do know. The disciples sat in a room waiting for Jesus to appear to them. 2 days in a row, he appeared and showed up in their midst. And then it seems that there's a couple of days or maybe even a couple weeks where they're in this room, but Jesus isn't showing up again. And so in the middle of facing what is unknown, Peter says, I'm going to do what I know how to do. I'm going fishing. And people go, yep, I'm kind of tired of sitting in this room as well. Let's go fishing together. And as they are out fishing, it says that they're having no success, but there is a man on the shore about 100 yards away. And he calls out to them in what I think is the most patronizing way. He says, children, have you caught anything? No. All right, well, put your net on the other side of the boat, as if changing your nets from like 12 feet on the right to 12 feet on the left is going to make a difference. And it says they take their nets, they move it to the other side of the boat, they go fishing, and they haul up a net full of fish. And then John, one of the disciples, looks at Peter and says, it is the Lord. That's Jesus. Why does he in a moment recognize that it's Jesus? Well, clearly some kind of maybe even miracle has taken place, but actually what John is realizing is that Jesus is doing something that he has already done for them before. Actually, when Jesus called his disciples, when he first met them something about 3 years ago, he actually did the same thing. He was out teaching in a boat, and there were people out fishing. They were catching nothing, and he said, put your nets in again, and they hauled up all kinds of fish. And so in John's mind, in all kinds of uncertainty of when is Jesus going to show up again, Jesus shows up for them just as he always has. He points them to a past memory so that they would know that God is faithful even now. There are moments when you face uncertainty, what is unknown. And in those moments, you can find yourself asking questions of God that you never thought you'd ask. When you face the unknown and it's all going sideways, you can cry out, where are you, God? Where are you? You can cry out, what have you ever done for me? Where are you in all of this, in the unknown? And first, I have to say that if you find yourself saying these questions to God, then thank goodness you know where to turn. Thank goodness that you know where to direct the questions, that Jesus himself can handle those questions of asking, what have you done for me lately? Where are you? No, Jesus knows how to handle those questions. He has very broad shoulders that can handle any doubt, any anxiety, any fear of the unknown. Because if Jesus himself can go to a cross and carry the weight of everything that evil has to offer, then I think he can carry your questions. He can carry every concern. He'll take it to the cross. He'll put it in the grave. And then when you see a resurrected Jesus, maybe those questions you cried out to God with, well, now you have an answer from a man who died but came back to life. No, to believe now, to have faith now, requires you to remember what God has already done for you. There's someone who's exploring pastoral ministry over at Christ Memorial. We're one church in two places. His name is Reuben Jones, and I just love talking with him. He walked into the office when I was talking with Pastor Paul about this very text. And I said, Reuben, how do you know God has been faithful to you? And he just kind of, in a moment, went silent. And what I saw happening in his brain that he wasn't quite saying out loud is he was processing all these moments of God's faithfulness. He was processing all the times where he knows that God has never given up on him, and he didn't even have like a really good answer in the time, and he just said, I just know that God has always given me what I need. It might not have been the way I wanted it to happen. It might not have been the quantity in which I wanted it to happen, but I know that because I can look at what God has done for me, he has always given me all that I needed. The disciples, they remembered this story of them being called and catching all these fish, and Jesus invites them to come to the shore. And as they get to the shore, it seems that Jesus has set the table for them to eat breakfast after a long workday. And in the Gospel of John, it's recorded, and it makes no mistake, that as he records what it is Jesus is doing, he takes fish and bread and offers it to them. And again, in that moment, the disciples' brains jump back to something that Jesus has already done. An actual miracle where Jesus had thousands listening to him teach, and now he actually takes a little bit of bread and a little bit of fish and feeds thousands. And so why would we think that a man who died and came back to life couldn't just feed a couple men gathered before him on a beachside? No, and as they eat the fish and they eat the bread, they remember that God has always been faithful to them. That what he has done in the past tells them of his faithfulness right now. That's kind of how memory works. You remember something in the past, and it actually changes the moment in which you live. You've all seen a mother who becomes a new grandparent, and her brain starts to like short circuit. Do you know what I'm talking about? A mother who becomes a grandmother holds the baby, and like they didn't know that first off, when they had their kids in the first place, they're like, I didn't know I could love like this. And then they have a grandkid, and they're like a whole nother level of love, right? And grandparents will do anything. They will buy gifts, and they will just lavish everything on that child, because what's happening is when they have that grandchild is they are remembering when they had their own child. They're remembering what God had given to them years ago. Or maybe this, for those of you that are married, you actually sit at a wedding ceremony and you hear people make vows to one another, and then like your wife reaches over and touches your hand trying to hold it. Please hold it. Hold their hands, because what they're doing is they are remembering the promises that you made to one another long ago. Know that past memory allows you to be faithful in that moment now, in the present. And I think it works much the same way with faith. Was it just last week that we baptized Liam? Bill, Anna, just last week? I'm losing track of weeks. I told them this, but as we had Liam up here, Bill, Anna, Jeremy, and Megan, and we were baptizing their baby, First off, when you see someone baptized, you start to remember that God made the promises that they're making to that baby to you, that those promises are also for you. And as I was looking at Bill and Anna, I told them I started to get emotional, but pastors have to keep their emotions in, because if I cry at one baptism but not another, you'll wonder how much I like you or don't like you. And so I'm looking at Bill and Anna, and they are just, all I can think about is everything God has done for them in the last 3 years. That in one moment where their new baby would be baptized, we can remember the faithfulness that God has always had for them long before. If you don't go to funerals, you should start hanging out more. You should go to funerals. I know you're young, but you should go to funerals. When there's a funeral, usually like a crowd of regulars that come. It's retired people usually, because they have more time to do things during their day, and they show up to a funeral. And I love when I'm at a funeral and I look out and I see widows. I see people who have lost the one they loved, and yet they come back for a funeral, remembering the one that they've lost, but actually the grief they initially experienced is starting to wane. Because in the midst of that grief, they start to believe in the resurrection promises that are being proclaimed at the funeral every month and year thereafter. They can remember that God has been faithful back then, so that they know that God can be faithful now. The disciples went out fishing, knowing that just a few weeks prior, the man that they had followed died on a cross in a public execution. They remembered that moment, but they made sense of that moment because Jesus was now with them. The Jesus who had died was now alive, and it meant everything for them, that every word he had said before the cross was now even more true after the cross, because he had proved his faithfulness to them, that he said he would never abandon them, and he will never do it. There's someone much smarter than me who said this, that to have faith is a lot like being in a rowboat. Okay, so there's a difference here. Imagine, if you've been canoeing, you actually canoe and you're looking forward with the paddle, moving forward in life, right? But a rowboat, well, you've seen it maybe in like a Central Park movie motif, some kind of romantic scene. It's that you're rowing, looking backwards, and yet moving forward. And this is how to have faith in Jesus now. To look back at what Jesus has done, the promises he's made, his faithfulness, so that you can know he is faithful to you even now. So this last week, you were confronted with all kinds of images of destruction and loss and grief just a few miles away from where you live. So many people kind of up in the northern part of our city experience deep loss and grief to a natural disaster, to a tornado. And one community that's being impacted especially deeply right now is our friend Gerard Bowling and his congregation up at Bethlehem Lutheran. They're in the Hyde Park neighborhood just north of downtown and really directly in the path. And they have numerous people who have lost their homes, numerous people who are reaching out for all kinds of things. And they are worshiping today, and man, I can't even imagine what that worship is like. Maybe we should all be up there, right? But Pastor Gerard sent out a prayer Saturday morning, and I think what he did is showed us how to have faith, looking at a Jesus who was faithful, but will be faithful to us even now. He wrote this in the prayer. He mentioned Isaiah chapter 25, and he called out to God in this prayer and said, "You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in their distress." You have been. Why would Jesus not be now? The Jesus who would die yet come back to life, why would he not be their refuge now? He said, you calmed the storm with just your words, and the winds obeyed. You calmed the storm. Why would you not calm the storm of our hearts now? No, Jesus has been faithful. He has proven it, and he's faithful to us even now. And this is the beauty of it, that a Jesus who was once dead but is now alive can do the same for you. Because you know that when you face the uncertainty of life, when you faced what is unknown, that it felt like death. And yet Jesus has given you new life. And you stand today and you sit here for a purpose, not to play games or just to sing fun songs. You stand here and sit here in this room because that Jesus who died is now alive, and he has done the same for you. So that's why you trust in Jesus, because the one who died and rose to new life, who has done it, will do the same for you and does it even for you right now. And so let's pray. Father, we have seen your faithfulness. We have seen what you have done for your people throughout history. So we ask for you to do it now for us. Would you be our refuge, our strength, the source of our life? Would you be with us always, just as you have promised? Father, all these things we ask in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.